Hey guys, come on in, come on in. We have new information in the Bryan Kohberger case. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff to go over. Come on in, tell me where you're from. You can tell me what city, what state, what country. Today we're going to talk about new information regarding Bryan Kohberger and his WSU proposal. The professor shot it down. We're going to talk about new details on the knife sheath with crime scene photos. The defense team led by Ann Taylor is refusing to pay restitution to the victims. Is Bryan Kohberger getting another day in court? Yeah, he is. So everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion. This video is for educational purposes only. This video is for adults only. So viewer discretion is advised. If you haven't subscribed, it's free. Please consider like, share, leave a comment, and come on in and tell me where you're from. Today, we're going to talk about new information regarding Bryan Kohberger and his WSU proposal. We're going to do that right now. And then we're going to talk about new details on the knife sheath, the crime scene photo, the defense team refusing to pay victims. I have something to say about that. Curious what you guys think. And then we're also going to talk about, is Bryan Kohberger going to get another day in court? So Bryan Kohberger wanted to research a how-to small town police. He wanted to do this at WSU, run digital investigations. And he was claiming to his professor that the police force in small towns were undertrained. You could just see how arrogant and how superior Bryan Kohberger feels about everybody else, right? So without realizing, the private forensics labs would soon expose his attempts to hide his tracks in the Idaho student case, according to his project proposals, which the Idaho State Police released at the public records request. So let's look at this PDF file. Just grabbing that. And pulling it up. Okay. So my sourcing on this is Fox News. Let me take this down. Add this in. Let's see. Okay. So this is my sourcing on this is Fox News. And this is a really interesting article. I won't read it to you, but I'm just wanted to show you my sourcing on this. So his professor called out his assumption before local police about local police. So this may be why he felt so confident, right? Why he just felt so confident. And this is the Celebrate team. They were supposed to testify for the prosecution. So Bryan Kohberger wanted to do a research paper on how small town police run digital investigations, claiming that they were undertrained without realizing that a private forensics lab would soon expose his attempts to hide his tracks in the Idaho student case, according to his project proposals, which I think is really interesting.
You know, at 10, it was 10:13 in the morning, day of murders. He takes this selfie of him in the bathroom, and you can see a Band-Aid on his knuckles, and his knuckles look like they've been scrubbed. And you know what happened with that picture? Nothing. He takes selfies all the time, and it seemingly does nothing with them. They just are in his phone.
It's a lot of selfies.
Yeah.
I watched American Psycho back in the day, and how vain he was, where he would always take like naked photos of himself flexing. Similar to that, like with him just in pants.
Not naked.
But topless from the waist up, flexing a mirror, forward, backward, making different expressions, but just for himself. It was like he admired his body. And some he would suck in. Like he was already a thin guy, but he would like stand like as sucked in as possible. It was strange.
Pictures of like different angles, like holding the phone like back here and getting like a profile, like again, we don't know for what. Just
he seems obsessed with himself, with his parents, with his body.
So think of that, but he takes his shirt off, flexes his muscles, and takes a picture of himself, and then just goes back to whatever he was doing before.
How embarrassing. We've all seen those photos. How absolutely embarrassing. This guy was...
If he took the selfie and sent it to someone,
it would make more sense.
Okay. All right. Yeah. But nope. Just sort of cataloging what I look like. for Noah, for himself. So on Christmas night, so December 25th, and then cresting into the very early morning of the 26th, he went to a website which was Serial Killer Timelines, and it's literally like biographies of serial killers. Here's this person's name, here's where they were born, here's their parents, their family animal, here's where in their life, something got stressful and then they overreacted at school. Like, it was crazy details about all these serial killers. And he just went literally click, click, and went through serial killers like for an hour on Christmas night, as we all do.
That's a very interesting way to spend your Christmas night. But he was probably living vicariously through them.
But and some of these were downloaded, and so this was one of the
mistakes.
Yeah, the mistakes that he made is he cleared some browser history, but when he was clicking some of these links, he was actually downloading a PDF to his device, which goes to a different directory that is not easy to get to as a user. And so all this stuff was just sitting there, and he's a criminology major. Could you excuse it? Maybe, but not at this point, not for this guy.
So I think that was really interesting. They were going to be testifying for the defense team. So I want to go back to this one for a second because I want to look at these photos together. So his professor put a kibosh on the idea of him writing a research paper on small town police, claiming that small town police were undertrained, because they ended up solving the case. Now they were really smart. They brought in the Idaho State Police right away. Moscow PD hadn't handled a case like this in years, and so I think Bryan Kohberger was thinking about this too, feeling very superior to small town police departments, and didn't realize that they would call in not only the Idaho State Police, but they also called in the FBI when they got to the crime scene. So there were multiple agencies looking into this. So what do the new photos of this knife sheath reveal? Because we've got these new photographs of the actual knife sheath. This isn't a knife sheath. This is the knife sheath. So this knife sheath was part of 2,300 pages of evidence released by the Idaho State Police. And the images show a brown leather sheath featuring the U.S. MC, United States military seal, measuring less than 15 inches long. The blade itself is 7 inches long. We know that Bryan Kohberger purchased this knife sheath along with a K-bar knife, along with a knife sharpener on Amazon in March of 2022, in the months leading up to the crimes, which occurred on November 13th of 2022, which is coming right up. The newly released documents largely pertain to the DNA forensics conducted in the case, including text messages between investigators, where they revealed that the sheath was initially checked for fingerprints, but that no fingerprints were found. Then the Idaho State Police forensics report reveals that the swab was taken from the front strap, so that's this strap right here, and that they did several swabs on the edges, on the handle portion of the sheath, and then on this snap, on the inside snap. And so they were able to get a DNA sample from the inside snap of the knife sheath. Now, a lot of people wondered, and we heard a lot of people saying that, oh, there was no blood found on the knife sheath. Well, it turns out that there was. There was blood found belonging to Kaylee and Maddie, who were both done away with in Maddie's bed. And that was found on the back of the knife sheath, according to court documents. So what did the DNA from the then identified male, how did the law enforcement get from this knife sheath all the way to Bryan Kohberger? Well, the DNA profile from a then identified male was found on the snap or the clasp of the knife sheath, which is right here. And they uploaded it to CODIS, which is the database for known offenders. But of course, there was no match, meaning the perpetrator did not appear to have committed any crimes in the past. Well, it turns out he did, but he got it scrubbed, but that he did steal his sister's cell phone, but probably not enough to get his DNA put in CODIS, because I think it has to be a felony. So with no match in CODIS, the DNA sample was then sent to Othram's Forensic Genetic Genealogy Lab in Texas, where the Othram forensics team built a DNA profile of the perpetrator. And within 48 hours, the team determined that the perpetrator's ancestry went back multiple generations in the United States and that his family was from Pennsylvania and had a very specific Italian background. And Othram Laboratories found that only 2 families in the whole of America fit that specific criteria. And among those families, there was only one man who could have been in Moscow, Idaho at 4:04 a.m. on the day, November 13th of 2022. So BK drove a white Hyundai Elantra, which also matched the suspect's vehicle. We saw it circling the neighborhood 5 times before coming up to the house, and then he circled it like a shark 3 times before doing a 3-point turn and parking. And it turns out BK lived just 10 minutes away from Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan was spending the night, but he lived nearby. So over the state border in Pullman, the same white Hyundai Elantra was seen circling the house. And this, law enforcement did not arrest BK right away. They needed more information to get a probable cause warrant to arrest him. So after they identified him, which happened on December 19th, the law enforcement agencies tracked him down to his parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. They posed as garbage collectors to do a trash pull in an effort to obtain a DNA sample. So how did the authorities get the information that they needed to obtain an arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger? Well, among the newly released ISP photos and lab reports are the trash that was collected. I'm trying to see if we have any photos of that. This is a really good close-up of the knife sheath, and it just shows you where they got the trace material. There's Dr. Ramsland. I'm going to mute this and let it play through. And I'm just wondering if that's what all this fuss is about. All her interest in Bryan Kohberger and all of his interest in suddenly not paying the family restitution, that this is related back to Dr. Ramsland. Because he doesn't want to compensate the victims. He is making a big fuss about it. Why are Ann Taylor and Becca Barlow signing their name to this?
What would be your main...
Oh, it's got music on it. Okay, I can't play her interview with music because I don't have the copyright to the music. Okay, I was hoping to play that for you guys, but it does have sound. That's all right. We have a ton of stuff to go through, so we're good. Let's put up Kaylee and Maddie. So they got it out of the trash collected from Bryan Kohberger's parents' house. They got Band-Aids, a straw, pink earplugs, lollipop sticks, water bottles, a Dunkin' Donut coffee cup, nail clippers, and there was a Q-tip. And this is what they were able to get the DNA from. And this came back as a match to Bryan Kohberger. It was a Q-tip that linked back to his father, Michael Kohberger. And the ISB documents also reveal that other evidence collected sent to the Idaho State Crime Lab as part of the investigation included fingernail clippings from the victims. We know that under Maddie, we had a likelihood ratio that was not going to be allowed to be admitted in court. But, we still haven't found out what the likelihood ratio was. But obviously it wasn't good for the defense because they did not want to let it in. So now we have Ann Taylor's, Becca Barlow, and Alyssa Mathoff signing their name. And the LA County Prosecutor's Office defended its request. They have to defend this for convict Bryan Kohberger to pay restitution to the family members of the victims. Why why are you signing your name to this, Ann Taylor? Why are you signing your name to this, Becca Barlow? And why are you signing your name to this, Alyssa Mathoff? Please don't send any negativity to anyone. But man. So in a recent court document, both the prosecutors, Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings, responded to Bryan Kohberger's objection to paying the higher compensation. The prosecutors are asking for restitution, which was court ordered, to cover the travel and lodging expenses for the families who had to attend Bryan Kohberger's court proceedings. And you'll recall that it was Ann Taylor who moved Bryan Kohberger's court proceedings from Latah County all the way up to Ada County. So now the family members had to travel so that he could get a fair trial. So the families were forced to travel to Ada County for all of the subsequent hearings and ultimately Bryan Kohberger's sentencings. And prosecutors finally clapped back at the defense, at Bryan Kohberger's ridiculous claim that he should not have to pay his restitution, that he should not have to pay any money to the families, which takes me back to Dr. Ramslin, who's, suddenly back on the scene again. Why are you back? Why won't this man pay his debts? So quote, in this case, there is a history of this defendant receiving financial compensation from family and third parties. This is according to prosecutor Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings. Additionally, this case has and will continue to attract worldwide attention, which could result in the defendant prospectively receiving money subject to interception by a state treasurer. And there it is, folks. There it is. Bryan Kohberger, there's no son of Sam law in Idaho, and Bryan Kohberger wants to profit from his crimes. If there was no money to get, if there was no deal in the works, he would not be running back to court to try to get out of paying his dues to the family members. And I sincerely hope that Dr. Kathleen Ramslin is not involved in some type of a book deal with Bryan Kohberger and actively trying to cut out restitution to family members of the victims. I sincerely hope that it's not her or someone like her. Because she said she would like to write a book about Bryan Kohberger, this SK expert. Please don't send any negativity, but I would like the names. Tell me if you guys agree with this. Let's do a poll. Do you think the names of the people who are donating to Bryan Kohberger's commissary should be publicly available? I want to see who's giving this man money. There's no need for this to be kept secret. But the Idaho's crime victim compensation program is not covering these expenses for family members as prosecutors previously believed. And I just can't believe that Bryan Kohberger's attorneys are signing their name to this. I would not want my name to appear in any document that refuses to pay restitution to family members of the victims. Bryan Kohberger broke into their house while they were in the middle of the night. No one was bothering him. Nobody was starting an argument with him. Nobody did anything to him. He broke into their house because he's an incel. And now the defense team doesn't want BK to have to pay his restitution so he can have more money for his commissary. And I don't think the commissary donors need to be remain anonymous. I hope the prosecution reveals it. I think every single one of their names deserves to be made public. And let's see what you guys are in agreement. Michael says yes. Thank you for modding today, Michael. Lori says yes. Thank you for modding. Angela says yes. Thank you for modding. Kay Blink says yes. Thank you for modding. Francie says yes. Thank you, Francie. Las Vegas girl, thank you for modding. So you guys are in agreement. And Veronica says, whoop. There's a son of sin-in-law I found out, but I'll send you the video that Cash Patel did on YouTube. He has his own channel. Well, I don't know. It doesn't apply here. BK can profit from his crimes. But maybe they're going to change that, which would be great. I hope they do. Nobody should be allowed to profit from their crimes. Eileen said, yeah, the name should be released. It's just sick that people will donate to him. Las Vegas Girl says yes. And T. Lynn says yes. Michael says yes. Veronica says, in my opinion, Ann Taylor is contributing to his commissary. Oh. And Shelley says she would like to see the list. And Space Junkie confirms Idaho does not have a son of sin-in-law. No one should be allowed to profit from the crimes. You are right, Veronica. And Las Vegas Girl says, couldn't we do a FOIA request? Yeah, I'm going to try. Dawn says, yes, definitely from England. Thank you, Dawn. So this is a disgusting move, in my opinion, on the defense team, arguing that he shouldn't have to pay extra money requested by prosecutors to the families of Maddie and Kaylee and Ethan and Xana. Because, the other thing the defense team is arguing is because these people received money through GoFundMe, which was money from the public. The public wanted to donate to the family members of the victims. They weren't offering to pay Bryan Kohberger's restitution for him. That's not what they were offering. They just wanted to make sure that the family members of the victims could get to Ada County for the trial, which was supposed to last 3 months. Remember, this is the same defense team that was willing to throw not one, not two, but 3 innocent men. Ann Taylor was going to name 3 innocent men as alternative suspects if the judge had allowed her to, just days before she went running to the prosecution to beg for a plea deal. When the judge said she couldn't impugn the integrity and reputation of 3 innocent men, that's when she decided they needed to make a plea deal. This is a defense team that was willing to implicate 3 innocent men, ruin their reputations forever, because there would have been videos made about them. But good and decent people, in my opinion, aren't willing to falsely accuse other people of schmurder. The defense says, Ann Taylor says, Becca Barlow says, Alyssa Massoth says, the additional funds sought do not qualify as an economic loss under Idaho Code 19-5304 because Steve and Christy Gonzalez and Karen Laramie received extensive funds through multiple GoFundMe campaigns that specifically asked for and covered the expenses the defense sought. The expenses sought, the defense team filed. No, it didn't, because the Gonzalez family had refunded that money. I bet the Laramies did too. But even if they got to keep all of it, even if people said, you know what, keep my money, I don't want it back, they weren't donating to Bryan Kohberger. This doesn't absolve him of his responsibility. So in my opinion, there's money in play, which is why Bryan Kohberger is fighting this. That says Bryan Kohberger has no ability now or in the future to pay restitution because he is serving 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years. Okay, Ann Taylor, if he has no ability to pay this, then who cares? Why do you care? If he has no money and there's no money coming in, why are you filing this? I think Ann Taylor, in my opinion, is not reading the room. The trial had to be moved according to her, because she didn't think they could get a fair trial. The taxpayers of Idaho had to fund his entire defense, including her salary. And Ann Taylor stood up in Latah County and said Bryan Kohberger couldn't get a fair trial, and therefore we have to move it to Ada County. And then she got a judge. She was hoping for a more liberal jury in a bigger city. And maybe she would have gotten that, but she got a judge that was absolutely not going to let her walk all over him. She stood up repeatedly in front of all of us, knowing the evidence, and claimed that Bryan Kohberger was innocent. She was willing to destroy the lives of 3 innocent men by falsely accusing them of being alternative suspects. Except the judge said she couldn't do it. So the move to Ada County meant that the victims' families would have had to travel, and had to travel much further, and needed accommodation for what they thought was going to be a 3-month trial. And then when Ann Taylor realized that Bryan Kohberger was going to face capital punishment, and he probably was going to get convicted and probably would have gotten capital punishment, then she begged for a plea deal. This was against the wishes of half the family members of the victims' family members. But she got her way. So she's already, got her way on this. Meanwhile, Ann Taylor, Alyssa Mathoff, and Becca Barlow argued in a recent court filing that because the family received donations from the public, they did not suffer an economic loss that requires reimbursement. Nobody that was donating to those GoFundMes was doing this to absolve Bryan Kohberger of having to pay his restitution. The public was not donating to the family members they were donating to the family members of the victims, not to Bryan Kohberger. So I'm just wondering, is anybody else wondering if there's a book deal or a movie deal in the works for Bryan Kohberger? Because I think this is more, there's something going on here that we can't see, that we don't know about. But there's money on the table. Because if he has no ability to pay it back, then what difference does it make? What difference does it make if he has no ability to pay it back? After this, we are going to do a members only live stream. So after BK pled guilty, sparing himself capital punishment, sparing himself the trial, sparing himself the ultimate punishment, the Gonzalez family went back to Facebook and announced their plans to return the money to those who had helped them attend the trial. And I saw a couple of people in the comment section actually harassing them to hurry up and pay donors back, even though they probably weren't the people who donated. But I saw good people too in the comment section that said, you know what, keep my donation. I don't care. But the defense team wants you to believe, they want the judge to believe, they want the good people, the taxpayers of Idaho, who continue to have to fund this. Are you okay paying for all of this nonsense for Bryan Kohberger? Or did you think this plea deal meant that it was over for him? And that you would be spared future expense? Because Ann Taylor isn't doing this for free. So the defense team is claiming that under Idaho law, he'll never be able to profit by way of a book, movie, or entertainment of any kind. So again, if he can't profit, what difference does it make? Why are you running this into court? If there's no money to be made and there's no way he can pay it back, why are you running this into court? The prosecutors, Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings, argue that the inability to pay is not in and of itself a reason to deny restitution. According to Idaho law, judges have discretion to order restitution in individual cases. I agree. They say BK has received financial compensation from family and third parties. I would love to know who's on that list. Is Dr. Ramslin on that list? Are Mary Ann and Michael Kohberger on that list? Who else is on that list? They say Bryan Kohberger has received financial compensation from his family and third parties. And there it is. His family members are putting money on his commissary. And he gets to keep some of it, but a percentage of it goes to the victims of the family. Will they ever get the $300,000 in fines, fees, and restitution that Bryan Kohberger is facing? I don't know. If there's a book deal on the table, and his family can do an end run around by taking the money themselves and then just putting it on his commissary. Well, he'd still have to pay a percent to the victim. I don't think he should get any money on his commissary, in my opinion. I think once the victims' families are paid, once his fines, fees, and restitution is done, only then can he get commissary money. That's what I think. What do you guys think? So Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings argued that the inability to pay is not a reason to deny restitution. And the judge has discretion to order the restitution in individual cases. So the prosecution also stated, additionally, this case has and will continue to attract worldwide attention, which could result in the defendant prospectively receiving money subject to interception by the state treasurer. I will guarantee you, I will put money. Well, I'm not going to put money, but I in my opinion, there's money in play here that Bryan Kohberger would get through his commissary. There's money. So Ada County now has to pay, the good people of Idaho now have to pay for another hearing on November 5th. We're all going back to court in a couple of days to talk about this further. And I just can't believe that the defense team has signed their name to this document. Would you want to be associated with refusing to pay restitution to the families of Ethan and Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana? So I think this lawsuit is frivolous. I think it's wasting taxpayer money. I think if I were a taxpayer in Idaho, I would feel a certain kind of way about having Ann Taylor waste more of my money in a tough economy where grocery prices are high, where some people are struggling to be able to afford health insurance, where some people are struggling to afford food, but they have to pay for this nonsense. That's where their tax dollars are going. What Bryan Kohberger has so far costed every single taxpayer in Idaho, each individual person has contributed, give or take, around $5 to $6 to Bryan Kohberger so far. So do the good people of Idaho want to continue to foot the bill for frivolous lawsuits on behalf of this man? At what point does he have to hire his own attorney to start pursuing this? Yeah, Mama says, I bet he's asking because there may be some money on the table. Oh, I'm sure. I agree. If you're asking what percentage it is, it's 25% of his commissary goes to the family. I think it should be all of it. Holly said, I think he would go bonkers if he didn't have commissary write complaint letters. He has to be comfortable. Lori says, write to the Idaho state legislatures and ask them to put a son of Sam law. Yeah, they should. Toss Penny said, if he wants to argue about payments, they should open it up for review and withhold 90% of his jail money. Fair is fair. Shelley said he should have a prison job. He can't be let out into Gen Pop, general population. But I agree. He is gross. Linda says, sign a petition. Yeah, if you live in Idaho, you might want to consider don't harass anybody or anything like that, but you might want to consider just letting your congressperson know that you don't want to keep having to pay for Bryan Kohberger. And just says he's complaining all the time. Yep. He doesn't like being in prison. He's so entitled. Ugh. The lady Lexi said he should be made to work in prison for his whole sentence to pay off the costs, all the costs, no commissary ever. I agree with you. Veronica said, I hear the hearing is going to be by Zoom. I wonder if I'll get to see it. I hope so. We're going to try. Yeah, Mama says, it is wild. He's complaining about his conditions. He should be happy to have his life spared after what he done, right? He's so entitled. He is not sorry. He can fold laundry in his jail cell. Yeah, good point. Dandy says, give him and only him if he goes to genuine population. Attention-seeking behavior. Yeah, he gets Gets more attention. His lawyer comes in. Well, why is Ian Taylor, signing? It's all about money. Yep. Holly said, yeah, why can't he work? I don't know. Las Vegas girl said they really need to reform prison experience. They need to go back. No luxuries. He has no concept of others. He lives in his narcissistic bubble. This man has never had to. The young women were beautiful. And Ethan is beautiful too. Just a beautiful smile. He's not sorry. No, he's not. Not at all. I agree. Not sorry at all. Thank you to NJazz for gifting a reporter room membership. Let's do something happy. If you got that reporter room membership, well, guess what? We're having a members only live stream after this today. We're going to do a Q&A on any true crime topics that you guys want to talk about. And thank you to NJazz for gifting another reporter room membership. That is so kind of you. Thank you so much. That is so kind of you to do that. So if you got one of those, please know. Cabling said, well, I wouldn't put her like, as bad as him, but definitely, why is she signing her name to this? Why is she enabling him? Linda thinks she's going to ruin her reputation. I think it's, it is. Las Vegas says it's disgusting. They need to be put to work and not have cable TV, commissary, intertype. I think that they could have commissary, but after they pay off restitution, or at least a bigger percentage. Right now, my understanding is that it's only 25%. So at least a bigger percentage could go to restitution, right? I think that's my opinion. I think so. I do want to say thank you so much to NJazz, who became an executive producer this week. Thank you and welcome, NJazz. Thank you to our producers, Sasha Angel, George Brown, Michael L. Cole, Christy Valentine, and welcome to Randall Rand. And thank you to all of our amazing channel members. Thank you so much for being channel members. If you would like your name to appear just like this, you can hit the join button. Subscribing is free, which helps me out a lot. So please don't feel like, if you're struggling, please don't feel like you have to be a channel member. I know a lot of people are struggling right now, but if you would like to help the channel out, this is a way that you could do it. It's $2.99. You get a check mark next to your name in the chat. You get your name appears just like this during all my live streams. And we do members only live streams, which we're going to have one today. So if you would like to join, feel free to hit the join button. But subscribing is free, and that helps me out a lot too. So thank you so much. And I also want to do super thanks and coffee gratitude for the last live stream that we did. Thank you so much, Michael L. Cole, Randall Rand, and Michael L. Cole. And thank you for your gifted channel memberships, NJazz and NJazz. All right, let's do a couple more comments. Janine says, thank you so much for the membership. That is from NJazz that gave you that. She's right here. Thank you so much for the membership. It's greatly appreciated. You didn't have to do that. It was so generous. So that is for you, NJazz. Shelly said, I did not mean for Kachingan, but he could do laundry. Yeah. I mean, something. You're right. I mean, he could do laundry in his jail cell after the restriction. Frazee says, if any pro-burgers are sending money to BK, they should consider if there was a jailbreak. He now has I know. He now knows where you live. He knows your name. It was BTK's daughter, Carrie, came out and said to people who write her dad love letters, she said, please don't do that. Please don't do that. If he ever gets out of jail, now he has your address. Please don't do that. Linda says you are a doll, NJazz. Janine thinks it's unacceptable. NJazz is saying thank you to everyone for being here tonight. And Las Vegas Girl says, congratulations, NJazz. You deserve it. You deserve it. And thank you for modding today. And NJazz, Las Vegas Girl, K Bling. Who else is modding? Drop your name right now so I can shout you out if you're modding today. Holly's modding. Let me scroll back through. Cabling is modding. Thank you guys so much. Lori is modding. If you're modding, drop your name right now and I will shout you out. Thank you so much to Las Vegas Girl and Lori and Enjaz. Thank you so, so much. Thank you for being here. All right, so if you just got a channel membership, we are going over right now. We're going to do a channel members only live right now. And if you haven't subscribed, it does help me out. It's free. Hit the subscribe button, give this a thumbs up, drop me a comment in the comment section below, and let me know if you would like me to continue to follow the Bryan Kohberger case. Do you want me to air the hearing? Let me know. See you next time.